Hello and welcome to this edition of the Innovation Circuit with Theta. Today we're staying local. Until recently, our closest Microsoft Azure data centre was Southeast Australia, but that has all changed with the opening of the New Zealand North data centre. Here with me today, I have a great panel of digital and data experts to talk about what this means for New Zealand businesses. Let me introduce you to the team. We've got Hamish Strong. Hi, Hamish.
Hi, Liz. I'm the Modern Platforms Manager at Theta, so I look after all things related to cloud and on-premise platforms.
Cool. Great to have you along. I've also got Amir Abid. Hi.
Hi, Liz. I'm Amir Abid. I'm the Data Architecture Practice Lead, and we are looking after data and analytics solutions on Microsoft Azure platform.
And you'll all remember Jeff Wogan. He's been on our podcast before. G'day, Jeff.
Hello, Liz. Yeah, my name is Jeff, and I'm the head of digital.
Cool. Well, team, it seems like we've been waiting for a long time to have a locally hosted New Zealand Azure data centre. What level of adoption are you guys seeing, and what services are available to our local customers?
So we're certainly seeing interest in adoption by customers that already have workloads in Azure, as well as new customers to Azure who may not have considered moving stuff into Azure until there's been a local presence. So there's a lot of people that are quite excited about it and really starting to commence planning and in some cases even moving workloads there right now. So services that are included in the NZ North region are Microsoft's foundational and mainstream services. So that's I guess what we would call the basic building blocks needed for hosting most of your cloud-based workloads. Strategic services aren't quite there yet. They get added when there's sufficient demand from customers to make it worthwhile for Microsoft to implement. If you want to find out what specific Azure products are in the New Zealand North region, you can log on to your favorite search engine and search for Azure products by region, and that'll give you a list of deployed services in the New Zealand North region, along with any other region that you care to search for as well. We also know that Microsoft 365 tenancies can now be hosted in New Zealand. So that's great for new Microsoft 365 customers. And for existing Microsoft 365 customers, there's also a migration path available to move your tenancy from wherever it is at the moment, most likely Australia, into the New Zealand North region.
Awesome, that's great. What about migration costs? Does it cost more to host out the New Zealand data centre, and is it easy to migrate over?
So what we would recommend, for our customers or for everyone interested, in the Azure North, New Zealand North region, is to go through feasibility assessment, understand, what the current state, the workload, and what they want to do. And that will be suitable if we can categorize, the customers around, a green field where people just want to start their cloud journey. So this will be the first stop for them to go and evaluate and do the feasibility assessment, or a brown field while it is cross regions workloads, or it can be a very good use case for business continuity planning, disaster recovery, or backup of already existing services in Australia region or any other region, and we bring services, back to New Zealand.
Some good reasons for migrating to consider there. What about the ability to now store data within New Zealand's borders? At a recent conference I attended, there was a bit of uncertainty and confusion about data sovereignty requirements. How does New Zealand North help us address these sovereignty requirements?
So it's important to understand the difference between data residency and data sovereignty. So data residency means that the data is stored in country, and in our case, obviously New Zealand, which means it's subject to New Zealand laws around information management, privacy, etc. Data sovereignty is what is which countries have sovereignty over that data. So in this case, the data sovereignty is held by two countries, New Zealand and the US. And the reason the US has sovereignty over data is because Microsoft is a US-based company and they're bound by US law, specifically the US Cloud Act, which can require them in certain circumstances to hand over data when on demand when requested from an appropriate US-based law enforcement agency.
Got it.
However, that's less complex than us or than the customer hosting data in Australia, where you're then subject to Australian sovereignty and residency regulations as well.
Right. So we are simplifying things, even though it's a slightly confusing topic. One thing we hear a lot about at the moment is the environmental impact of these large data centres. I know our Theta Green team tracks our carbon footprint, and I know sustainability is an important factor for all New Zealand companies. Is a data centre of this size in New Zealand really what we want?
Yeah, it's a good question because ever since day one, the New Zealand North region is being powered by 100% renewable energy. And that came as a result of a big agreement that Microsoft made with the local energy provider. It's not just the energy, like electricity that's being consumed by, but it's also, these things are water intensive. All of the cooling that's required in a data center requires a lot of water. And with these in New Zealand, they've implemented some pretty innovative water-free cooling systems, which is a pretty big environmental consideration in a world where that's water conservation is more and more important. And all of that's great for the environment, of course, but is it meaningful to businesses? Well, I think it will be for a lot of them, actually. Many will have sustainability programs in place that have measurables and KPIs and so forth, not only for themselves, but for their suppliers too. So it means that they can be more confident that moving into the cloud in New Zealand will really help align more with their sustainability goals.
That's really great news. Another thing that was recently announced was that the New Zealand North data centre is the first global cloud data center, and Microsoft the first global cloud provider to achieve certification by the Chief Digital Officer of the New Zealand government. And so basically, this new data center is government certified. Does that make it easier for government agencies in New Zealand to move their workloads across? Are we starting to see that movement for agencies?
So it's certainly making it easier. So the specific thing, I guess, that was achieved out of this in practical terms is that the data centre complies with government requirements around protective security requirements, which is one of the elements that the government requires when moving any sort of workload into a cloud or even an on-premise environment. So that's a really, really great achievement. And of course, they were first, so that gives them a first mover advantage. So it does mean that government agencies and also organisations that deliver service into government agencies can be confident that those protective security requirements are met by that provider.
Awesome. Amir, you mentioned earlier about a feasibility assessment as a good first step for customers looking whether they can move workloads into New Zealand North. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that involves?
So the feasibility assessment involves understanding, the business and technical needs for a new workload, or if they want, to migrate, or how we previously said, about business continuity. And then they will go, to evaluate this business and technical needs against the regional capability. And the region, in this case, it is Azure North region. Define, these key business objectives against the availability of the service. Understand, the cost, define the timeline. That will give the business the confidence to adopt the services within Azure North region for all these previous reasons, we spoke about.
Hamish, just tracking back to something you said earlier as well, because I wasn't aware that things had changed. So you mentioned that Microsoft 365 services like Office and SharePoint and Teams are now running locally in New Zealand. Is that the case?
That is the case. And so for new customers that perhaps haven't quite made the move to Microsoft 365 yet, or are using a competitive product and want to consider moving to Microsoft 365, you can now tenant your Microsoft 365 workloads in New Zealand. If you already have a Microsoft 365 tenant as I said before, in Australia or Asia, there is a migration path. There are some licensing requirements that need to be complied with, but it's absolutely something that can be done.
Cool. That's great progress.
And Liz, I've actually got a question for you as head of cybersecurity. What do you think are the security aspects of the New Zealand North region that people might not know?
Yeah, good question, Jeff. I mean, we've talked a little bit about that government certification that the data centre has. The data centre has actually been designed specifically with New Zealand's regulatory requirements in mind, which means that data housed in the New Zealand North region is governed by New Zealand law, including the Privacy Act. So that's really great. This government certification simplifies the compliance process and reduce the costs for customers moving and migrating. So rather than them having to go through all these additional assessments on their own, they can rely on the certifications that are already in place. So simple compliance, meeting regulatory requirements, meeting the Privacy Act, and reduce costs for assessment. I think, those are the main kind of security benefits of moving to the new data centre. Talked a little bit about, what are some of the benefits of the local data centres? What are the other benefits that we kind of see in moving to a locally hosted data centre beyond what we've already discussed?
So New Zealand businesses and users will experience much better response times. Data requests don't need to go all the way to Australia and back. They're serviced straight out of the Auckland region or the New Zealand North region. So that's a real boon for real-time traffic and for performance-sensitive traffic. It also provides a better user experience where users aren't sort of waiting, that extra half second or what have you for a response, which really improves the user experience.
Yeah, it does really make a difference on a lot of scenarios that people might not even think of, because they might just think of, the really big things like online gaming and video conferencing and all that. But there's a lot of more practical areas too, I would say. Really anything that has a real-time aspect would benefit. So that could even be chatbots or anything with real-time status tracking or real-time data sync. The list goes on, really. But I would say there's more benefits too. Like, the arrival of the data centers like these is also expected to stimulate significant economic activity. It will empower businesses and to innovate and scale globally. And from a local point of view, Microsoft is also committed to a significant investment in local skills development to support the growing digital economy. So to that end, is committed to partnering with educational services to upskill 100,000 people with training over the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's going to be fantastic. And I think, we've got the AWS data center coming in later in the year as well. So, lots happening in this space for New Zealand, which is really great. So let's start wrapping things up. I've got a quick fire question to finish things up. So thank you, everyone. So the quick fire question I've got for you: what's the top myth you've heard about moving to Azure North? Hamish.
For me, it's not being ready for production workloads. It absolutely is ready for production workloads, and we're already seeing customers running their production systems in the New Zealand North region.
Awesome. Amir, top myth from you.
For me, the top myth, people, they need, to do and analyze the workload, back to the feasibility, because, Microsoft, they have the data centers with the different categories, and, the services are categorized in 3 main categories, and one of them is called strategic services. Strategic services are not available in Azure North region by default. They will be driven by business demand and business requirement, case by case. So it is important to go and assess what's available from services before you commit for a full thing in Azure North region.
Cool. Thanks, Mia. I think, Hamish, you gave us a hot tip on a Google search to look for earlier on that one. Jeff, what's your top myth?
I would say is that it's prohibitively expensive to migrate. Any of the cloud providers out there really want to see organizations move to their platform, whether it's coming from on-prem or from another provider. They've put incentive programs out there for it, really. So there's funding assistance options to make it smoother, easier, and cheaper, because they really want to see it done.
Excellent. Thank you all for your input today. And I know you guys are busy helping customers migrate over at the moment. So I know you'll be open for any kind of questions from any of your customers as well. Thank you all for your time. And thanks to everyone listening in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the links in the show notes where you can find out how to get in touch with us if you're interested in finding out more about migrating to Azure New Zealand North. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Liz.